For nearly 4 decades, a middle-aged sorcerer named Ephtal dedicated his life to mastering lightning magic, fighting beside other legendary heroes to vanquish the Demon King. In typical tales, this is the point where the weakest party member gets cast aside and betrayed. Surprisingly, however, the kingdom's citizens show genuine gratitude for his efforts. As the monarch expresses his thanks to the group for halting the demon army's advance, he reveals their compensation. To honor his valor, the sovereign declares he will grant him the kingdom's most prestigious rank, the title of emperor. Hearing this leaves Ephtal completely astounded. Such a designation is usually reserved exclusively for nobility, and even among them it is exceptionally scarce, making this an unfathomable privilege for him. Once the sovereign crowns the champions of earth, fire, and water as emperors, his attention shifts to the lightning maid. The king notes that while Ephtal may not boast the raw power of the strongest sorcerers, it is universally recognized that victory would have been impossible without him. Therefore, he too is awarded the emperor title. Overjoyed, Ephtal realizes that every sacrifice he endured throughout his grueling training has finally paid off. Many years later, Ephtal has grown into an elderly retiree residing in a rural village. He passes his time instructing the orphans he has adopted over the decade. During today's lesson, the old man instructs his pupils to balance rocks on their heads while practicing magical arrays, a method designed to improve their concentration. A few kids have a hard time initially, but they eventually grasp the technique. Once Ephtal deems their performance satisfactory, he allows them to rest. The youngsters are completely drained. After commending their diligent efforts, Ephtal announces his desire to watch them execute the 4th-tier spells they learned the previous week. Just as he finishes his sentence, however, Merlin voices her concern, questioning if he truly wishes to proceed without resting himself. He recognizes her sincere anxiety over his advancing age. Nevertheless, he reassures the girl that his joints don't yet pop like bubble wrap when he bends his knees, meaning a little more standing won't exhaust him. This prompts Ephtal to recall their very first encounter. Merlin was born to a demoness who became collateral damage in one of his past skirmishes. Despite her demonic heritage, the retired hero chose to adopt the infant, knowing she would perish on her own in such an environment. While she's likely too young to retain any memory of those events, Ephtal knows for a fact that he slaughtered countless members of her kind during the conflict. Because of this, her genuine worry for his well-being stirs a lingering sense of guilt within him. Brushing those thoughts aside, he opts to resume the lesson, instructing the group to prepare for their 4th-tier review. Unexpectedly, Merlin interjects, requesting that he introduce some 6th-tier magic instead. Her peers are baffled by her eagerness to advance so rapidly, considering they had only just covered 5th-tier spells the day prior. Caught off guard by the sudden plea, Ephtal shares their confusion. He acknowledges the girl's strong desire to grow but advises against rushing the process, assuring her that she will master the 6th tier when the time is right. For the moment, he insists she continue honing her current skills, emphasizing the crucial role of basic fundamentals. Hearing this leaves Merlin slightly disheartened, as her goal was to absorb new knowledge as rapidly as she could. Still, she respects her mentor's wisdom and consents to concentrate exclusively on foundational exercises for the time being. Sometime afterward, Merlin is shown standing before a dense, shadowy woodland. Though visibly frightened, she pushes past her terror, determined to display her courage and validate her capability. Her objective is to slay a beast lurking within the depths of the woods. By doing so, she hopes to prove she deserves the title of the Lightning Emperor's greatest apprentice. Achieving this would allow her to assume responsibility for instructing the other kids, thereby relieving Ephtal of his duties so he could properly enjoy his golden years. She is well aware that he would never request such a dangerous stunt, but her sole motivation is to assist him however possible. While her intentions were noble, her logic was deeply flawed. Less than 10 minutes into her expedition, she finds herself sprinting frantically out of the trees, pursued by a gigantic, terrifying wolf. To make matters worse, none of her 4th-tier spells had any effect on the creature. Every magical attack she threw at the beast either went wide or inflicted negligible harm. The massive canine merely continued its relentless approach, completely unbothered. Realizing that outpacing the monster is impossible, she resolves to gamble everything on a 6th-tier spell, despite having barely practiced it. The young mage starts chanting the incantation. Even with the rabid beast bearing down on her, she successfully holds her concentration long enough to finish the formula, unleashing a massive streak of lightning directly at her pursuer. A wave of immense relief washes over Merlin. She is certain her strike has finished the beast off. To her absolute horror, however, the monster bursts through the resulting explosion entirely unharmed, tackling her roughly to the dirt. It menacingly stalks toward her prone body, preparing to take a lethal bite. Right at that very second, a genuine bolt of lightning obliterates the creature. Hearing the familiar thunderous crack brings a joyful grin to Merlin's face, signaling that Ephtal has arrived to rescue her. However, her relief vanishes instantly upon noticing his sheer rage, as he had explicitly forbidden her from venturing into those woods. Shrinking back in remorse, the girl begs forgiveness for her reckless action. Her master begins a harsh reprimand, instructing her to abandon this habit of hastening her progress. He explains that wielding unrefined, imperfect abilities does not equate to actual strength. Furthermore, he emphasizes that even the most devastating spells are rendered ineffective if the user lacks a proper understanding of their mechanics. Right in the midst of his scolding, the giant wolf miraculously rises and looms up behind him. Without even bothering to glance over his shoulder, Ephtal nonchalantly orders the beast not to interfere with his teaching moment. He then casually unleashes a 10th tier spell, instantly reducing the monster to ashes. Shortly thereafter, the retired mage escorts his pupil back to their residence. Merlin remains in awe, replaying the incredibly inspiring image of him effortlessly casting 10th tier magic. Ephtal, however, simply instructs her to get to bed quickly, noting how exhausting her day has been. She complies and begins preparing for sleep. Suddenly, her mentor collapses to his knees, hacking up blood. Startled, the girl rushes to his side. Ephtal expresses his regret for allowing her to witness him in such a frail state, fully aware of the high regard in which she holds him. In response, Merlin confesses that she was already aware of his deteriorating health. Having noticed the symptoms some time ago, she explains that his illness was the exact reason she had been striving so fiercely to become his replacement. She wanted to prevent him from continuously overworking his fragile body. A wave of shame washes over Ephtal as he realizes his declining health is what pushed the young girl into such dangerous behavior. Nevertheless, he insists that his remaining lifespan is brief, meaning he cannot afford to squander a single moment on relaxation. Confused, Merlin questions why he stubbornly clings to his duties despite his severe illness. The old man clarifies his ambition. He desires to personally shape the future era of sorcerers, which includes her and her fellow peers. Once upon a time, his ultimate dream was to stand as the most powerful magic user in history. Having come to terms with the impossibility of that goal, he has shifted his focus toward properly equipping those who will come after him. This statement leaves his student perplexed, given his obvious immense strength. While Ephtal silently acknowledges that his power exceeds the vast majority of magic users, he knows reaching the absolute pinnacle is unattainable. The remaining emperors possess greater youth, superior strength, and much higher natural talent than he ever did. At the break of dawn the following day, a knock at the door brings one of the pupils bearing exciting news. Word has spread that the Flame Emperor recently released a study detailing a reliable technique for determining an individual's innate magical affinity. Stunned by this revelation, the old man eagerly snatches the publication to read it firsthand. True to the rumor, the text outlines a flawless procedure for assessing magical talent. Marveling at the Flame Emperor's groundbreaking innovation, Ephtal decides he must try it out immediately and summons the entire household. Moments later, the group congregates in the workshop to conduct the experiment. Once the necessary ingredients mentioned in the paper are assembled, Ephtal chooses to evaluate Merlin first. He drops 4 individual strands of her hair into separate vials. Shortly after, the liquids shift in hue, with the green and blue containers illuminating brilliantly. Based on the published findings, this intense luminescence signifies an S-rank affinity for wind and water attributes, a fitting result for a prodigy like her, the others note. The faintly glowing brown and red vessels reveal C-rank and B-rank aptitudes for fire and earth, respectively. As the room buzzes with awe over her remarkable potential, the master silently confirms the procedure's flawless accuracy. The outcomes perfectly align with his own observations of the girl's development since infancy. Up until this point, sorcerers could only identify their specialties through trial and error, practicing every discipline until specific elements naturally surfaced. With this new breakthrough, however, a child's affinity can be gauged right from birth. This allows for highly optimized training regimens, enabling future mages to achieve far greater strength than previous generations. Convinced of the experiment's validity, the elderly hero announces his intention to test his own properties. Initially, Merlin questions the necessity of this, pointing out that his identity as the Lightning Emperor is already undisputed. Yet, Ephtal's true motive is to discover whether he genuinely possessed the necessary spark to become the absolute best. Throughout his career, he was forced to exert exponentially more effort than his peers merely to remain relevant among them. As the evaluation concludes, the devastating truth behind his struggles is finally laid bare. He lacks even a shred of natural talent. Disbelief washes over him as he stares at the perfectly clear vials, indicating an absolute absence of magical affinity within his veins. His immediate reaction is utter denial. He assumes there must have been an error in his methodology. However, regardless of how frequently he reruns the experiment, the transparent outcome stubbornly persists. Ultimately, he has no choice but to confront reality. His failure to match the prowess of his fellow emperors was never a matter of insufficient effort. Rather, the magical spirits had forsaken him from the very beginning. Overwhelmed by an agonizing sense of betrayal, the sheer shock triggers a massive heart attack, sending him crashing to the floor. Confined to his bed shortly after, his health rapidly deteriorates. In his dying moments, the old man bitterly resents the cruel unfairness of his existence. He had dedicated his entire life to the belief that sheer perseverance could elevate him to the pinnacle of sorcery, only to learn his ambitions were futile from day one. Ephtal subsequently passes away. Yet at the exact instant his life ends, a dormant secondary reincarnation ability triggers, transporting his soul to the divine plane to stand before the goddess of reincarnation. The mage had entirely lost memory of this passive trait, considering his initial rebirth into that world occurred more than half a century prior. Realizing this, he suddenly feels rather foolish for weeping over his tragic fate just seconds earlier. The deity warmly receives him, noting how much time has passed since their previous encounter. She expresses profound admiration for his monumental achievements during his latest life, especially given his vessel's complete lack of innate magical capacity. Moving past the pleasantries, she informs him that the moment for his next rebirth is at hand. The goddess offers him a unique dual growth perk to ensure he won't be hindered by any developmental ceilings in his upcoming existence. Ephtal politely declines the offer. He asserts that the vast accumulation of mystical knowledge he already retains is more than enough to propel him to heights he could never reach before. Unsurprised by his stubborn pride, the deity accepts his decision as it perfectly aligns with his character. Seeing his readiness, she initiates the process, sending his soul into a brand new vessel. Upon awakening, Ephtal discovers he is now a young boy residing in a rural settlement alongside his new mother. His daily routine is exceedingly ordinary. However, the moment his past life memories fully integrate, he dashes toward the nearest shed. His immediate goal is to replicate the Flame Emperor's talent assessment procedure. He prays that this new body harbors a decent magical affinity, enabling him to eclipse his previous limitations. To his profound dismay, the results reveal he's just as untalented in this life as he was in the last. A strong wave of regret washes over him for rejecting the deity's generous gift. Saddled with mediocrity once more, he assumes his progression will inevitably stall after mastering 10th tier spells, mirroring the exact plateau he faced before. While wallowing in the misery of his seemingly doomed fate, his attention is drawn to a massive dragon soaring above. The beast appears to be making a beeline toward the nearby town. A squad of armored guards is already mobilizing to intercept the creature. Ephtal instinctively moves to join the fray, but quickly remembers he is merely a 4-year-old toddler. Had he been at the zenith of his former strength, slaying the beast would have been trivial. Yet housed within such a tiny underdeveloped frame, executing his signature 10th tier incantation seems physically impossible. Curiously, the mere thought of the formula triggers an involuntary physical reaction. The very sorcery he spent decades refining in his past life activates on accident, obliterating the airborne reptile in a single devastating strike. Bewildered, the local guards surround the fallen monster, entirely clueless as to what just knocked it out of the sky. Frankly, the reincarnated hero is equally perplexed. He never fathomed that his new infant form would automatically inherit the peak destructive capabilities of his former existence. That was the end of episode 1. Comment the word mage. Picture opening your eyes in a child's body yet possessing the intellect of a legendary sorcerer. For 3 years, Ephtal buried himself in literature before uncovering an incredible reality. His reincarnation took place 4 centuries in the future. He couldn't wrap his head around how rapidly the world had shifted. The quiet is interrupted by a gentle tap at the door. Elia, his mother, answers it to reveal Ephtal's striking older half-brother, Fraser, who greets them with a bright smile while delivering their allowance. This brief exchange highlights a dignified family scraping by purely because of his support. Stepping inside, Fraser's gaze instantly locks onto the massive stack of complex texts resting before young Ephtal, leaving him utterly stunned. It seemed impossible for a kid his age to digest such dense literature. Remaining composed, Ephtal offers a clever smile before putting on a mask of pure innocence to ask the ultimate question. When would Duke Alcott, their father, pay them a visit? The atmosphere shifts instantly. Pity washes over Fraser's expression as he gently answers, "Apologies, buddy, but father is overwhelmed with imperial duties and simply doesn't have the time to see you." At this point, a massive revelation drops. Ephtal has quite literally never laid eyes on his father. To make matters crazier, Duke Alcott happens to be the great-grandson of the Lightning Emperor, meaning the Duke is actually a direct descendant of Ephtal from his previous existence. Yet because Elia lacks any magical aptitude, the Duke's primary wife and his various concubines treated her terribly, ultimately exiling mother and son to this remote, neglected rural area. For all intents and purposes, Ephtal is an illegitimate child. Were it not for Fraser's generosity, they would have been left utterly destitute. Shifting the conversation, Fraser inquires about Ephtal's future ambitions. With a gleam in his eyes, the youth eagerly responds, "I plan to enroll in the Imperial Magic Academy." Instantly, the situation morphs into a comedy. Elia's overprotective instincts flare up. She quickly claps a hand over his mouth and lets out an anxious laugh, claiming, "He's just kidding around, we possess no magical ability." Ephtal plans to perfect his swordsmanship and attend the military academy. Fraser. Ephtal catches on right away. In his past era, his magical prowess was common knowledge. "I was the valedictorian of that academy, so how about we evaluate your sword techniques right now?" Fraser proposes. Overjoyed, Elia squeezes Ephtal into a hug so crushing he nearly suffocates, leading him to wonder, is this affection going to be the death of me? Following this, their practice commences. Under Fraser's observant gaze, Ephtal performs sword strikes, though he is secretly pretending to struggle to conceal his ridiculous physical power. All at once, the puzzle pieces click into place in Ephtal's mind. Fraser had been instructing him in foundational subjects and battle strategies specifically to ready him for the military. The older brother believed this was the sole method to keep his magically untalented sibling safe. Dropping the act, Ephtal stares directly into Fraser's eyes and declares, "I will be attending the Magic Academy, no debate." Getting down on one knee to be at eye level, Fraser attempts to reason with him, explaining that everyone is born with unique gifts. Ephtal swiftly cuts him off, stating, "I possess mana and I am capable of using magic." Furthermore, the boy is burning with curiosity to see how sorcery has advanced during the last 4 centuries. Conceding at last, Fraser presents an offer. I'm going to demonstrate authentic magic. Should you manage to replicate even a fraction of it, I'll draft your recommendation letter myself. Steeling himself, Fraser shuts his eyes and launches into a lengthy theatrical chant to call upon the spirits of the wind. Once the extensive buildup concludes, he executes his ultimate move, a level 2 wind spell known as Wind Blade. A razor-sharp gust slices a massive tree straight down the middle in a single blow. Panting and dripping with sweat, Fraser stands motionless, bursting with pride over what he views as a mythical feat. Observing this, Ephtal merely glances at the split wood and nonchalantly asks, "Hold on, is that all?" Fraser's mouth falls wide open in disbelief. In the next moment, without speaking a single syllable of a chant, Ephtal lazily flicks his wrist and effortlessly executes a level 4 spell. An enormous shockwave obliterates the woodland, carving a colossal pathway right through the timber. Fraser's sanity crumbles. How could a mere 7-year-old trigger high-tier spells instantaneously? The moment Ephtal casually tacks on, "Sorry about that, I can actually wield level 10 spells, but I restrained myself," Fraser's brain short-circuits entirely. He collapses unconsciously right there, frothing at the mouth. An intense investigation is now required. Ephtal immerses himself in his texts once more to contrast modern sorcery with the magic of his original time, leading to a startling realization. Over the span of 4 centuries, magical arts have massively digressed. Fundamental spells he once instructed toddlers to perform are presently regarded as ancient, lost technologies and classified as advanced, restricted sorcery. On top of that, the ability to launch spells immediately without chanting is considered nothing more than a fairy tale by contemporary society. Awakening with a shriek of Ephtal's name, Fraser is thoroughly traumatized by the event, yet Ephtal executes a masterclass in manipulation. Flashing an adorably innocent grin, he persuades his brother that the colossal blast was actually the result of Fraser's own phenomenal casting, and that a stray chunk of timber had simply struck him in the head, causing him to swoon. Gripped by sheer denial, Fraser swallows the falsehood and eventually relaxes. Smirking inwardly, Ephtal acknowledges that from this point forward his magical practice must be kept entirely under wraps. Everything kicks off with ridiculous resolve. While sparring against Fraser with a wooden blade, Ephtal finds himself repeatedly knocked into the mud. However, the tenacity carried over from his former life proves far too potent, and his psyche outright rejects the concept of losing. With every fall, his fighting spirit surges, driving him to scramble back to his feet and demand another bout. Years go by. Having reached the age of 10, Ephtal can be found perched above a towering waterfall, cleaving massive tree trunks in two with solitary swings of his wooden weapon. Gradually, he starts developing a passion for the blade that matches his love for sorcery, musing, "Hold up, a mythic magic swordsman. That actually fits me perfectly." All of a sudden, his contemplation is broken by Fraser calling him down to commence their daily practice. His older brother announces that this session will be unique, as he has invited a legendary figure named Moria. The newcomer is an absolute behemoth of a man, bald, heavily muscled, and sporting a prominent scar across his brow. The second Ephtal makes eye contact with the giant, a suffocating pressure washes over him, mimicking the sensation of staring down a sentient mountain. Looking down with an arrogant smirk, Moria challenges, "Let's see what you've got, kid." As the skirmish gets underway, Moria displays horrifying speed. Ephtal is forced to cast physical enhancement spells merely to track the giant's motions, an act that leaves Moria astounded by the boy's ridiculous mastery over his mana. Nevertheless, Ephtal's ego takes the wheel. He adamantly refuses to claim victory through sorcery. Just then, Moria delivers a crushing blow. The young boy barely manages a block, yet the sheer kinetic force of the hit causes the earth beneath them to tremble. Seizing a split-second window, Ephtal expertly slips past the behemoth's defenses, seizes his arm, and performs a flawless martial throw, slamming Moria into the dirt in a remarkably cinematic maneuver. Both Fraser and Moria are stunned into silence. Rising to his feet in a daze, the giant erupts into boisterous laughter and proclaims that Ephtal has passed the test. Fraser then unveils a major secret. Moria is actually the headmaster of the military academy, meaning the 10-year-old has just secured official enrollment in the prestigious institution. Chuckling with amusement, Moria remarks, "You tossed me to the ground, but the sword duel was still my win." Ephtal stands there utterly bewildered, pondering, how in the world did I just get enlisted into the military? Pitch black clouds cover the sky as a torrential downpour commences. Standing beside Ilya near a window, Fraser shares her deep concern for Ephtal's well-being out in the weather. However, the boy is actually utilizing the tempest as an ideal smokescreen to practice his covert sorcery deep within the woods. He experiments with a mythical tier 10 spell while critically evaluating his execution, noting a minor lag in both his channeling and mana circulation. Without warning, a colossal bolt of lightning blasts the forest, causing the surrounding landscape to quake. Fraser sprints frantically to his brother's side, demanding, "Are you hurt, Ephtal?" Flashing a harmless grin, the youth answers, "I'm perfectly fine, brother, don't fret." Ephtal is fully aware that the thunderstorm acts as the ultimate camouflage for his terrifying power. Upon returning to their residence, Fraser approaches his younger brother with shocking news. Duke Alcott is finally requesting a meeting. The mere mention of the name brings Ilya to tears of joy, and she embraces Ephtal so fiercely he nearly loses his breath. In her eyes, this summons symbolizes vindication after enduring years of banishment and scorn in their remote location. Conversely, Ephtal experiences zero enthusiasm regarding a reunion with his absentee parent. Nevertheless, witnessing his mother sobbing in delight and seeing the joyful moisture in Fraser's eyes, he resolves to go along with the visit purely for their sake. Touched profoundly by their familial warmth, he chooses to act the part just to maintain their happiness. Arriving at the sprawling family estate, Ephtal keeps his composure, intrigued to cross paths with his own descendant from his previous incarnation and see what has become of his lineage. Yet the moment he steps into the grand reception hall, a brutal reality sets in. The Duke glares at him with pure disdain and speaks with icy detachment. "Refer to me as Duke Alcott. I have never claimed you as my own. You are merely a stain on our family's honor." The humiliation continues. "You carry the bloodline of the Lightning Emperor yet lack any magical talent whatsoever. The founder is surely weeping in his tomb." Wet droplets slide down Ephtal's cheeks as he internally muses. "I am the Lightning Emperor, and I truly am weeping at this exact moment over what a monumental disappointment my descendant turned out to be." The scenario spirals into further absurdity when the Duke learns Ephtal was admitted into the military academy on a full scholarship as an honors student. Rather than displaying paternal pride, he breaks into hysterical laughter and shouts, "Wonderful! That means starting today I am completely free from paying child support or funding his upbringing." The man is genuinely ecstatic solely because he won't have to waste another penny on the boy. Staring back with intense disdain, Ephtal thinks, what a pathetic excuse for a human. To make matters worse, the Duke turns to an imposing, massive warrior named York and commands, "Test his abilities yourself. I must guarantee he won't bring shame to our household." A wicked grin stretches across York's face as a murky purple aura of mana surges around his eyes. Balling his hands into fists, the guard responds, "I'll discipline him like a mutt, my lord." Offering a chilling smile of his own, Ephtal locks eyes with York and thinks, understood. So this is how we are playing this filthy game.